Recorded February 28th, next to the last day of the leap month, 2024. Good afternoon, Andrea. Good afternoon, Roderick. Good afternoon, Brody. Notice I said good afternoon and not evening. What are we doing? What
It's
are we
3
doing?
o'clock.
It's 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
So is that normal? Why are we doing it? What happened?
Yeah, why? Why?
I think what happened was, hold on a sec. Facebook's doing a weird thing. All the storms that came through last night, I think we went through almost like a time warp and trying to catch up a little bit.
So you're saying the space-time continuum has been ruptured by a thunderstorm?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Weird things have happened, but no kidding. It is
I
actually
passed myself coming into the office today.
that's right. Yeah. I was back in time myself, and my younger self didn't want to hear anything I had to say. So there you go.
That's the way it works.
Just absolutely. So Andrea, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. How are you?
Life is fair, unless it happens to me first. There you go. That's it. You do anything interesting this week, Andrea?
Honestly, I've been putting together a document for kind of like, if I want to call it a POC document for Copilot for security, to help people walk through use cases and kind of, have some ideas of its power. But mostly, I feel like it's been training videos and a lot of internal meetings this week. Let's see, on the personal side, one of my dear friends is going to be in Tampa tomorrow, and I'm meeting he and his wife for dinner.
Really? We're going to be in Tampa. I'd like to meet those people.
What? Oh my gosh, what a coincidence.
I know, right? So we'll be
Make
there.
it a fivesome. Yeah.
Yeah. We can just see these outstanding, your favorite people in Tampa. But all jokes aside, I will be in Tampa hanging out with Andrea, my wife and I, to commandeer all of her time this weekend. So we're going to mooch off her the entire time.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
Actually, do you want to tell them why you're coming to town?
Yes. This is the first race of my race season. I'm coming to run this. I hear two different names about this big old bridge. Is it the Sky Bridge or the Skywalk Bridge?
It's the Sunshine Skyway.
Skyway. I got it wrong all the way around. So I'm coming
at the wrong place.
Well, yeah. So I'm coming there to run a race on
Skyway.
Sunday. Skyway.
Skywalker.
Some people are actually afraid to walk on that bridge. They say it's so high. It's so high in the air.
I'm afraid to drive on it, much less walk on it.
It encompasses your entire field of vision. Like it's like when I'm driving back and forth to Nashville, I'm coming down the mountains. Your eyes are this big when you really need to just focus that way. But yeah, we're coming down there to hang out. 2 birds, 1 stone. 3 birds, 1 stone. I get to come hang out with my besties. Wife's with me. We get run. I get to see my Beer Mar guys chapter. So that's it. Rod, what do you do this week, man?
I don't do anything.
Okay.
But I'll skip that because we do have things to talk about coming up. And I want to spend my little time to talk about what we have coming up on the show, and then a couple other things which I think are kind of super important that people would want to know about. First off, next month, since this is our last show of February, March starts next week, which is we literally have 2 shows a week next month for women in cybersecurity, right? That's
yes.
crazy.
Yes,
we did. And if you look at the schedule, you'll notice that March 13th, we had kind of like a super celebration show, which we'll still be able to celebrate something special, but we just won't be able to be as super excited about it because we have to kind of delay that excitement for another 2.5 weeks after that. So, but we'll talk about that later. The other thing is April, Edward and I have been talking to a couple folks about April being our partner month leading up to RSA, but we're going to have all Copilot for security partners on in April. That might tell you something about March 13th. I don't know. But anyway, another couple other things I think super important is Microsoft Build is coming up May 21st through 23rd. I will be there. We have a security track. The second thing I think super important is we just today announced the location and date for Microsoft Ignite. All right. So Microsoft Ignite 2024 will be in Chicago. And this, I have to tell you, this is the best chance for this entire group, our group here, to have an actual show, all of us in person in Chicago in November. We got to figure out how we can get Brody here. He's going to have to bring the new baby and his wife, or just leave, just bring the new baby. We'll see how we can accomplish that. Last thing from me, and I'll pass it over to Brody because I know I always take up too much time, but we just today released, my team did, a new security for beginners course. It's out on GitHub. I'll put the link in the show notes, but it's actually pretty good. It's like a 7-lesson. It's open source. It's vendor agnostic, right? So the idea here is for folks that want to dip their toes in security and cybersecurity and all the goodness. You'll be able to accomplish that through these training modules. So
that's great. Brody? Brody's distracted.
Brody's looking a little choppy today. So
yeah, something's going on with him. His voice comes through before the
my computer doesn't want to start.
Yes.
You want to
now the Wi-Fi is not working.
Well, I'll go
sounds like a weird Windows 95 issue.
Yeah.
Start me up. Get it?
I was thinking we were going full Godzilla movie.
Yeah. Old martial arts films. I will revenge you. You know, your mouth moves, right? So Rod took one of my things. What I've been doing this week.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No big deal. But I finally got my VMware lab squared 100% away. Thanks, Trevor, running VMware vServer 8.03. Forgot how terrible my virtualization skills had gotten, but learned a lot during that time beating it up. Frank's been on my butt about the forensics exam I'm taking in sometime in April, but I have been putting time in. Frank, if you're on the call, I doubt, but got really deep into the labs. It's worth a show by itself to really understand what you're looking for if you don't do forensics analysis. And I'm not talking about clicking around in a tool and watching a GUI come back and tell you something. Understand what spawned processes, what did this. You know, I've not really know much about DLL attacking, but now after looking at it, you go, no wonder we're always on the defensive. You know, and why most hackers, those who are not, you know, kitty scripts, script kiddies, are automated. It's actually pretty cool. I'm actually learning it now. I'm learning and enjoying it, right? So that's good. Lab will be up. I finally cleaned all the remnants of Andrea's malware and everything out of it, right? So that's gone. It's fresh. You can go back in it this time. Andrea, if you need to do something, I got snapshots now, so I can put everything back. So, and so me. A couple things. Microsoft is having a bunch of events around security and approach to AI. Andrea and I will be co-presenting on one of those in March. So I guess you and I need to practice our pitch, but I'd like to put at least a link in here about what we're doing. There is no link because they didn't copy it, but I will get it in the show notes. I'll send it to Rod. The link's been modified. You didn't see it. One other cool thing that came out that I was reading on is that for those who are looking to do intra demos and you don't have a lab and you don't have the ability to properly spin up a lab. One thing I hate about this is that when you open a hyperlink and put it in Teams, it doesn't really do it. So I'm gonna put I'm just gonna put a long URL in here. So if you're looking to just set up a lab, this will walk you through and explain how to set this up. Actually, a demo collection of a sort. I thought I couldn't share it at first, but now I can share it. So that's one. And there was one more cool thing that came out. Two more things. I'm looking at my screen over here. This will go toward you, Rod, since you tried to convince me to buy a $1,300 phone from Samsung. Yeah, that thing. And I know why they wouldn't give me a discount now. But now Microsoft Copilot for Android can be set as a default AI agent.
Except you can't call it like you could. You can't do like a Hey Copilot, which you could do with Google, and you can't. There's this little gesture where you could come from the corner and pull up Google Assistant, and you can't do that for Copilot yet, but you will be able to do that soon.
Yep. So I'll get that over to Rod. We'll throw in the show notes. And one last thing. There is, I think I can copy all of this in here and it's going to work. Let me just make sure. Yep. Announcing Microsoft's Security Service Edge Solution Deployment Guide for Microsoft Internet Access POC. A mouthful. With this, you can walk in and you can set up a demo environment to demo a lot of the secure edge stuff. And I just put it in the chat and it actually took it. So you can show it or not show it here. And we'll put it in the show notes. So Rod, I'll forward all those emails for you. So the last one I put in there about the secure edge solution deployment guide is actually pretty slick. Yeah. And
so the other links were horrible. This one's good.
Yeah, I think that one's good.
Okay.
Yeah, it was horrible. They're super formatting. So
well,
that's it.
Had some chatter in the chat about how excited people are that our guest is coming.
Oh, we do have a guest. Is it Brody? Oh no, you're right. We do have a guest.
Yeah. So unless everybody has anything else, we're going to go ahead and get our guest in. Brody will just have to sort of make it happen when he's happening, right? So to the show is Dan. Dan, I think we've been on a few calls before, and I definitely know that you're quite active in a lot of the Teams channels, everything around for XDR, some M365 Defender stuff. I think you were in a couple of Sentinel conversations and a few others. But I wanted to get you on the show because you seem to be the person every time there's a question, one of the things you pop in with an answer and helping everybody out. And I want to have you come on and talk about your experience because I know that you like all things XDR, but is it becoming to the point where people are just saying the three letters, but really they've lost all context to what it is because it seems like every vendor is doing it. So first of all, introduce yourself and then tell everybody who you are and what you do and how you do it, sir.
So hi, everyone. I'm Dan Chemistruck. Happy to be here. I've been with Microsoft for about 2.5 years now. I was a CISO at Infused Innovations for 3 years before that, managing about 20 clients and around 10,000 endpoints. And then before that, various job roles from incident response to vulnerability management teams. And yeah, I've been doing XDR, since the beginning, since Microsoft had an XDR platform. And yeah, to your point, Edward, that I mean, recently, you take the 6 pillars of zero trust, right? And as long as you're doing any 2 of them, you've got an XDR platform. So that's a little bit of the education that I've been doing recently. And then ITDR is the new acronym that kind of came out in the Gartner Magic Quadrant this year. If you were looking at the endpoint protection platform, a number of our competitors added an ITDR solution where they're kind of bridging either, primarily Okta or us with Entra ID together with their endpoint signal and detection, so that you're not just locking out the device, you're locking out the user account as well.
Dan, what does ITDR stand for?
Identity Threat Detection and Response.
Oh, excellent.
So they made it a point to have it differentiated between just typical, XDR response, right? Solely focused on, or have a high focus on identity, which can be in a show in itself, right?
And it's funny. So Gartner called out, the ITDR additions to all of our competitors, but not us. Like, we were the XDR solution, but we've pretty much had ITDR since 2020, 2021, when we added the advanced hunting table to the XDR portal. In my opinion, that's when we had ITDR, because we're doing multi-stage cross-domain, detections.
Okay. One of the things is it's always 6 degrees of separation here. And when you said infused, I was hoping it would spark a little bit of remembrance. I don't think you remember me. So we crossed paths before. I know those guys, Bob Berg's over there, Jose Costa. You and I've been on a few calls. We'll talk about it after the show a little bit, but I recognize you, and that's another reason I wanted you on. I say I know him. He came from Infused over there. Yeah. So we talked about that very first piece. So instead of going to ITDR, we wanted to talk about what everybody believes is the only XDR here, and you were saying more than two things. So, enlighten us in a way that it resonates to what you're doing every day or what you're saying to customers.
Yeah, if you guys don't mind, I've got a few slides on automatic attack disruption. I think it's what separates our XDR platform from everyone else, in the world we're competing against. Yeah, let me get the screen going. Let's see. All right. Looks like it's going now. So automatic attack disruption. This is essentially, I like to refer to it as a lateral movement firewall. It's not necessarily detecting malware, on the endpoint. It's not stopping DLL injection or memory bypass attacks, right? It's taking all that signal, right? It's looking at these indicators of attack, indicators of compromise, and it's stringing them together. And basically, once we get to a 99% confidence level that yes, this is a compromise, there's an adversary in your environment, we're going to trigger this attack disruption, which essentially evicts the adversary and stops them from moving laterally. We do this a couple different ways. We do it, both on the endpoint and then in the cloud, where there's no, telemetry from a laptop or even a cell phone. Forget if it's Scattered Spider is the one where it's cloud-based attack only. But anyway, so we have multiple detections. I've got some attack chains we're going to talk through, and yeah, that's in a nutshell. It's built into the E5 security platform, on by default, and we'll go through a couple of the requirements as we see some of these attack chains.
Okay.
So first, I want to start with some context why I think this XDR platform is the most important feature of the Defender suite. So typically, when you have XDR, right, some sort of activity happens in your environment, right? And when that activity happens and when it gets written to the vendor log that you're doing your detections on, usually that's about a minute, right? Whether you're using Proofpoint, CrowdStrike, us, right? Somebody gets an email, if it's phishing, within a minute, you see that log and you're able to do a automated response on it. But when you're using multiple vendors, each one of those vendors has to turn around and ship those logs to basically a SIM is how we've traditionally done this. A lot of our, well, I'm going to say all of our vendors, their XDR platforms are essentially a SIM because we're the only vendor that has first-party identity. And, so if you're doing like the CrowdStrike, Proofpoint, Okta, Palo Alto has a great XDR platform, but again, they're ingesting the logs from either us or Okta. They don't have a first-party identity provider yet. So when you think about this, right, if you've ever copied a large amount of files on your computer, right, if you copy 60,000 files with one character in it, it could take an hour. But if you copy one file with 60,000 characters in it, it goes pretty quick. So that's called message queuing in terms of data flow. So that's what happens when you have this multi-vendor environment is rather than just streaming, one row of logs, at a time constantly, they queue the messages and they ship them out, and that introduces delay. Another area where you could get delay is, for instance, I have a customer, right? They have their consumer platform is built on top of Okta. They're ingesting the Okta logs into Splunk, and they just recently started using Defender for Cloud Apps to do user behavioral analytics. And they're ingesting the Okta logs from there now. And when they turned on Defender for Cloud Apps, they hit the rate limit, the API rate limit for exporting logs out of Okta. And rather than going, paying for the next tier of API calls, they said, let's just throttle the data. So now if an attacker does a password spray attack, swamps them with, all these false positives, or, maybe they are trying to get in, right? But either way, they're swamping them with logs. That's just queuing up, and it's more delay, and it's going to take longer for that multi-stage detection to happen, because you can only do a multi-stage detection when you have all your logs from all your different vendors, right? So after that happens, a lot of times in these legacy SIMs where you're running them on-prem, your infrastructure has a certain amount of IOPS, and usually you don't have enough IOPS to run all of your detections in real time. So you schedule them every 5 minutes, 15 minutes, once an hour, once a day even, and that's more latency in your detection. Then you have your SOAR component, right, for when you do have those rules in place. And these are just more API calls to more vendors, right? And they have to do the TCP handshakes. You're going over the public internet. To make all this happen, you have to, say, okay, did you finish executing your command, right? It's just more time that's going into your response. And then when you don't, have these detections and automated responses, that's when it goes to, tier 1, and they typically escalate it to tier 2 within 10 minutes. And they either engage incident response from there, or they run through a playbook, right? And if you're not using like a security analytics platform, if you're just using like a data lake and running detections on it, on a scheduled basis, right, you're stuck kind of taking all these alerts and stringing them together into an incident. And while you're doing all this, the attacker's moving laterally. So I always say, by the time the SIM sees, what happened in your environment, the attacker's already moved on. So all these companies that are saying, oh, move at machine speed. I mean, you see all this. The machine speed is kind of slow. And so with our platform, we're actually able to move at the speed of the attacker right here after stage 1, right? Automatic attack disruption, since we are the first party for every part of the zero trust framework, from data, identities, devices, cloud apps, infrastructure, and then sometimes networking gets broken off as the last one. Since we're taking all that first party telemetry into basically a little mini SIM in our XDR platform, we don't have to wait for this to get shipped out to Sentinel. Right now, if you ship Defender for Endpoint logs to Sentinel, there's a few minute delay because we are doing that message queuing and we're putting that out. But in a couple months, when the new unified SOC experience comes out, we're going to have sub-second latency between our XDR platform and our SIM platform. And I think the only other vendor doing that right now is CrowdStrike. But again, CrowdStrike is limited to just their EDR data, and now they have Falcon Identity Protection, which is an agent that sits on your domain controller to do your on-prem detections.
Yeah, you said something interesting, and I don't know, and maybe my co-hosts or some of our listeners can do this. You don't think of it this way, but the dominance of AD, Active Directory, and the evolution of that to Azure AD, aka Intra, is one of those keystones that it's hard to overcome that integration, because I know that if you use a Linux or a Unix distro, there are some directory, files that you can set up a directory service there. There really isn't another first-party identity provider. Okta, is there any competition to Intra as a pure identity-only core authentication fabric? And I don't think there really is.
Well, I mean, Okta,
yeah.
right? If you're cloud only, Okta is it. And but I guess the point I'm making is Okta only does identity. They don't have an EDR platform. They don't have an email platform, right? They're just off doing identity by themselves, right? And they're relying on this open XDR platform, which again, with log shipping, is kind of slow.
Yeah, and they have their own SIM now. CrowdStrike.
Oh, Okta. Oh, CrowdStrike. Yeah.
If that's what you want to call it,
Yeah.
But yeah. So, but go ahead, sir. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah. No, their new SIM product, supposedly it's pretty good. It's a company they acquired a couple of years ago, I think, Humio. And again, hearsay. I heard there were performance issues for the first couple of years, but they finally figured it out in September last year with the new Raptor update. And again, they're marketing this sub-second latency, and it looks like they've got it all figured out, and it's a strong platform. Yeah, as long as you're fine with all this latency.
If you're fine with all the latency. All right, okay. So we're going around and we're looking at this. So when you bring all this stuff in, you said more than 2. Seem like you have more than 5 in here. Well, we have 5 touch points in here. So how do we bring it together here?
Yeah, so I'll run through a couple of attack chains, kind of, with our E5 security platform, kind of showing how this all works together. A couple more things I want to point out is, again, because we have this little mini SIM where we're first party and we're using the advanced hunting tables and the XDR portal. Our Defender experts for XDR, it's a fully managed service, doing tier 1 and tier 2 response. I'm just going to come out and say we're competing with CrowdStrike Falcon Complete, their Overwatch and Complete program for managed services. So this is pretty much the exact same service, except it's the entire Microsoft XDR suite. It is first party only from Microsoft, which is a kind of a differentiator. XDR CrowdStrike is offering to do it, with Okta and Proofpoint. So again, benefits depending where you are on your security journey, but we're responding, immediately, within 1 minute of the actual activity happening. Again, because we're not doing it at the Sentinel level, we're doing it at the XDR level. And then Copilot for security. Again, there's an embedded experience in the XDR portal. If you need, to do it on firewall logs and other third-party sources, I mean, we are over there, after stage 4 in this diagram. There's a Sentinel experience where you can embed it, and then there's a separate portal as well. But again, CrowdStrike, they're going to be they're going to be with us after stage 1, but only for EDR. And then if you're running their Falcon identity detections. There's Charlotte AI that just went GA. It's going to be over here at stage 4 when you're asking it questions about Proofpoint, Okta, all these other third-party signals where again you have this message queuing and delay.
Okay. And with that, you said Copilot. So Copilot aware, will be aware, complement, backside. Any insight to that?
For attack disruption, I mean, it's aware of, I guess, the tags. It does the natural language summarization. It's kind of similar to some of the Defender experts responses where it'll give you the guided response. But attack disruption is kind of its own feature. I would say probably separate. The only interaction I think between Copilot and attack disruption is the summarization. They're both seeing the same logs, right? Copilot's going to do the script analysis for you and give you some suggestions on how to respond, or how previous incidents have been responded to. But again, yeah, attack disruption is it's been around since November 2022, and it's separate, I would say.
I don't want to eat up all the calls. It looks like some of my co-hosts might have a question here. Rob, were you raising your hand?
Oh, raising my hand? Oh, yeah. I was scratching my eye, I think, or maybe I don't know what I was doing. No, I was actually earlier on in that process. You had mentioned that customer that was using Okta that ran out of those API calls, right? What was the recommendation there other than just use our products? Because is it just, you kind of have to live without all of the data, or, I'm sorry, but, you're going to be, you are, susceptible, or what is the response to that customer like that?
It's a decision they have to make. Either they are going to invest in more API calls or they're going to accept the risk of having delayed telemetry. And they chose, it's like, well, 10 minutes is still faster than not having this data at all. So,
well, and that's the thing that I think is important to highlight, because, we are trying to get to that goal of trying to monitor, identify, and respond as quickly as possible. And if we are stuck with tools that don't allow us to do that, then it becomes the tool problem, right? And the way I am, I'm just I like to be super efficient about everything. And if the tool that I have in my hand is not allowing me to be efficient enough, then I'm just going to throw it away. I'm just that kind of person. And I can't believe we have customers that aren't like that as well, or at least, maybe some of those customer management pieces or whatever. So.
Yeah. And I mean, you got to think there are still companies out there that have dwell times of, 6 months where they don't even detect that someone's in the system. So going from 6 months to, an hour, is huge
good
for
for
that
them.
company, right? But if
Yeah.
you're already at the hour, like you want to get down to like 2 minutes, right? Like what's the next step? So
It's almost like we need to award SEAL team success or something, you know.
right.
So,
Yeah.
Dan, I'm sure you're going to get here, but I think people would love to know, like, can you tell us what a disruption is? What actually will it do? What kind of actions will it take?
Yeah, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to jump
That's the
into
hot,
that.
sexy stuff. Let's get there.
Yeah. So this is adversary in the middle. This detection came out, I think it was May last year in 2023. And this detection, I'm going to go through it, and it uses Defender for Office, Defender for Cloud Apps, Entra ID, and Defender for Endpoint. And I just want to reinforce the next slide I'm going to go through is actually pretty much the same attack chain, but without Defender for Endpoint. So there are multiple IOCs and IOAs for each of these detections. So they're not necessarily required to have all the data, but as you see, when you have multiple products, feeding that telemetry into the XDR platform, the detections are faster. So in this incident, an attacker sends an email. It's not necessarily malicious. When the user clicks on the link, what it does is it modifies the browser properties on chrome.exe to basically set a reverse proxy to the adversary in the middle architecture or infrastructure the next time the user logs in and authenticates to Office. So again, it's not delivering malware. It's not a phishing attempt. It's just it's setting up this reverse proxy. So Defender for Office sees that the user clicked on the link, and Defender for Endpoint sees that the browser properties on chrome.exe got modified. So it's just suspicious behavior right now. Nothing incriminating yet. But 2 days later, when the attacker intercepts the session cookie, when the user logs in, that gets flagged by Entra ID, previously Azure AD, as a sign-in from an unusual location and property. And since I made this slide, we actually can detect that the token was stolen and initiate the response right here at this stage. But let's keep going. Say we don't have the confidence level, or we're missing some of the telemetry to do that immediate lockout of the adversary in the middle. So the attacker gets into the mailbox. They create a mail forwarding rule that says anything with ACH, go ahead and forward that to my gmail.com address. So Defender for Cloud Apps has suspicious inbox manipulation rules to do detections like this. If they're making rules to kind of like black hole, sinkhole emails, so that if a vendor replies to a hijacked mail thread, they want the end user not to see it. They want that to go to their inbox, over in Gmail or wherever they're hosting it, to again try to get to that business email compromise where they're stealing financial data or something else from the organization. So a couple minutes later, the XDR portal strings this all together, and it disables the user account. So when you disable the user account, all the session tokens get revoked, and it kicks the adversary out of the environment. You can see, so from the point where the attacker used the stolen token to when they got locked out, this was 4 minutes. The chain that we just saw, like when you're message queuing from multiple vendors, it can take 5, it can take 10 minutes for your SIM to even get the logs to do the detection, to do the response, because we're at the XDR level instead of the SIM level. Like we're just moving pretty much at the speed of the attacker. We're not just moving at machine speed anymore.
Yeah. What I like about this slide, I think it's 3 of them. They're sort of BEC, AITM, and token or session hijacking. Up in the upper right, in the upper right, it tells you the required products, and you'll notice that one of my favorite products is sort of prominent in all of them. Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. So cool beans.
So Dan, what are the chances that automatic attack disruption makes the wrong decision? How often have we seen it disable an account or isolate a device, and that was the wrong thing to do?
So the researchers set the threshold at that 99% signal to noise ratio. In real world practice for 2023, I think we were actually at the 99.5% signal to noise ratio. So only 0.5% of the time when it triggered was it a false positive. And I've got a couple slides later that show you. It's really easy to undo. They're one-click undo buttons, and you get an email that the disruption actually triggered, so that your SOC isn't sitting there scratching their heads going, hey, what just happened? So I'm going to go through this one a little bit faster. Again, same attack chain, but imagine someone's on their cell phone, right? So we don't have any telemetry from the endpoint in this example. So attacker sends a malicious email, in December, a month later, user comes back from vacation, clicks on it. Their session token gets stolen. Enter ID detects that, again, as the unfamiliar sign-in properties. The attacker doesn't do anything malicious at first. For 2 hours, they're just searching through the mailbox looking for a thread to hijack. They find one. They register one of these lookalike domains to kind of fool the third party, the vendor, on the email thread that they're going to hijack. And then same thing, right? They make this email forwarding rule to their new lookalike domain and to sinkhole the conversation history folder. Defender for Cloud Apps, again, that same suspicious inbox manipulation rule gets triggered. And then a few minutes later, the attacker gets evicted from the account by attack disruption, disabling the user account. And again, no endpoint data. And you can see, we had suspicious activity until basically they made the incriminating activity at this inbox rule manipulation. So from the incriminating activity to the time that the account was locked out, it's 22 minutes. And again, this is kind of going back to that point, like it needs this 99% confidence level to lock out the account. Otherwise, it doesn't trigger. So that's why, I have customers say, oh, why didn't attack disruption trigger, when, this, malicious DLL file was, downloaded. It's like, well, that was just one part of the attack chain and it wasn't moving laterally off the device. So attack disruption does not trigger in that scenario. It's, again, we're trying to limit and contain the breach without the attacker doing any more damage to the environment. And I think in the past 6 months, on average, we've been able to trigger attack disruption within 3 minutes of incriminating activity being detected. So it's getting better. It's getting faster all the time.
That's pretty cool. 3 minutes. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, in 3 minutes may seem, like it's still a short amount of time, but when you're measuring from the time something can get a breakout, once someone's inside your environment, you were talking about dwell time, that's to our listeners who are not familiar with that, is the time that someone's inside your infrastructure unauthorized to the point you detect them. But what you should be concerned about is breakout time, when they have now found a way to start doing either lateral movement with light credential, or start doing, credential escalations by doing, various attacks. So dwell time is important, but breakout time is more important, when they can start going left and right and up and down. Got to watch them.
Yeah. And, for my CrowdStrike customers, I love, I think in 2023, I believe it's called the Threat Defense Report that CrowdStrike publishes. They mentioned, the fastest breakout time that they saw in 23 was 7 minutes. Right. And that reinforces the need to have this multi-stage ITDR sort of solution. But then, I love coming in here and showing the latency. I'm like, well, they're pulling data from Okta or us, so they can't do the response in 7 minutes, but we can.
I think the interesting thing is that CrowdStrike is the one that kind of introduced a few years back the 1-10-60 rule, right?
Yeah.
Where you identify in 1 minute, investigate in 60, and remediate. So.
Yeah, and again, we're moving faster than that now, right? I don't know if they've updated that, but I've had, again, CrowdStrike customers say, how do you guys address this? It's like, well, we do it faster. That's how we address it.
Just do it faster.
That's it.
We just
it's
do
the
it faster.
1-1-1 rule at Microsoft.
Yeah.
So we have a question. This is from Noodle. What about intro-free customers of M365 V3 Business Standard? Are we leaving them in the cold?
Yep.
Simple
This
answer.
requires E5 security.
Yeah, E5 security, right? And it's it. And I don't want to get into a licensing thing or how people should go about their business, but is this tenant aware, or is it user aware? And where I'm going with that is, if a customer has 100, if a customer has 1,000 identities or users, 500 are licensed for E3 and 500 are licensed for E5. Are the E3s just left out of the game? They're not going to be protected, or is it going to be tenant aware? And if it's not appropriate to answer the question here, we're not encouraging anybody to do anything, because I've had that same question, right? Some of our products are license aware and some of them are tenant aware.
In that scenario, it will, as long as there's one E5 license in the environment, it will trigger on your E3 users, but you will be out of license compliance at that point.
Yeah, one thing I like to tell customers, well, I'm just going to buy one license and I'm not going to buy the rest. What you will lose is the ability to have very granular investigation of the user. It won't show up as their regular display name and their user account that's human friendly. You'll get something that looks like a funky GUID sometimes, especially around automations, right? It won't do it on all cases that if you don't have that user license for E5. So you roll the dice on trying to game the system to anyone that's listening out here. I've seen it in action where you put one in, you think you have everything, but when you're trying to run certain automations, certain attacks, certain investigations, it will not work, especially around identity. Especially around identity, it won't do it. So I just had that. Yeah. If our users ask the question, man, we got to put it out there. Our listeners, we got to put it out there.
Yeah, I think Microsoft 365 Business has all the licensing required for this. I'd have to double check if that includes Defender for Identity. That one.
It does not include Defender for Identity.
Yeah, I don't think it does, but it's got, Entra ID. I'm pretty sure it's P2, and then the Defender for Endpoint licensing in there as well. And it should be able to do the cloud app, at least the discovery for the inbox manipulation roles.
And if you buy the M365 Business Premium, it's definitely in there. The names were throwing me off, right? They got standard.
Oh,
basic.
That's what I was thinking of. Was Business Premium.
Business Premium. Yeah, Business Premium.
Yeah, the business. If there is something called business base, it's not in there. It's in Business Premium.
Yep. Noodle put a question there. No, we're not going to ban you, Noodle. It's free speech around here. We had a Facebook user. Recently, I was in conversation with a customer where they wanted to use SIMS, Sentinel to employ SDR, and wanted to know, is that one portal to use since the data can be pulled into bi-directional? However, my answer is generally on the unified portal. So I guess they're asking, since the Sentinel data is going to be coming to the Defender portal and it's going to be deployed across everybody, is the Defender portal to go to now? Do we even have to go back to the Azure Sentinel portal, Microsoft Sentinel portal?
In a couple months, it's going to be just security.microsoft.com. We're going to have the ability to have one Sentinel instance visible in the security portal. So if you're an international, or some other reason for having multiple Sentinel instances, you're still probably going to have to use portal.azure.com to get in and look at the multiple Sentinel instances. But if you're able to have just one Sentinel instance for the environment, you can just do everything in security.microsoft.com with the new unified SOC that is coming. And again, I'm expecting that in the next couple months.
And it's already been rolled out to some of the private preview, and it's still private.
I think it's a closed private preview now. Yeah, I think they're not accepting new people.
Yep. And for our listeners who say, well, man, I am a multinational company and I do have multiple tenants and I need to be able to pivot. You sort of can. I put it in a link here in the public chat. Microsoft has the ability to do multi-tenancy. So that URL, when coupled with your login and you validate successfully and authenticate, will then allow you to look at multiple tenants across your Defender stack. So why it's not a single pane, it is a single series of clicks to bounce between it. We got another question. Will purview compliance also be included there? And I guess by there, they're talking about the one SOC portal or the unified portal.
I got that question, and I need to go ask the product group. We have some.
So,
I think
say
it's one way.
How about that? Don't know when, but someday. Yeah.
So I think some of the data loss prevention alerts will show up, in the XDR portal, but I think it's a one-way sync. Don't quote me on that. I need to look that up, and maybe I'll get you guys an answer for your next show.
Brody is a compliance and data protection type of guy, but one thing I've noticed is that whole purview thing is full speed ahead. It seems like it's out innovating the threat announcements that are coming. Purview is just rocking and rolling. You're seeing all this stuff.
Stay tuned to Microsoft Secure in a couple weeks for Purview stuff.
Yep.
Always has been.
Yeah, it's kicking it, right? Oh, Brody's back. There he is. I see him now.
Back.
Brody's back.
Fixed by computer.
Noodle helped him troubleshoot his computer.
I'm so sick of typing in my BitLocker recovery key. You have no idea. But I did. I threatened it with a system restore, and then it booted the next reboot. But it didn't system restore. So whatever. We're good. I'm here. Hi. Thanks, Dan. I've been listening the whole time on Twitch. Great presentation.
Oh, great. Thanks. Do I have time for one more?
Yes, sir.
All right, great. So human-operated ransomware. This is, again, somebody trying to get into the network and move laterally. And this one, we have Defender for Identity. I think it's the new one, out of the 3 attack chains that we've gone through so far. So Defender for Identity is how we disable the user account in on-prem AD. It does not use the Azure AD Connect or Entra Connect, I think it's called now. It doesn't use that mechanism to disable on-prem because that only runs every 30 minutes. This one will do a near real-time disabling of the user using the Defender for Identity sensor in your domain controllers. So in this instance, an attacker already has access to an RDP server. They try to deploy this darkness.bat file, and the built-in Defender antivirus, that ships with every version of Windows 10 and newer, detects it and blocks it with real-time protection. So the attacker tries to disable real-time protection, but because this device is also enrolled in Defender for Endpoint Plan 2, it comes with tamper protection, and you need a certificate to offboard the Defender for Endpoint and disable tamper protection. So since the attacker does not have access to the security portal, they can't get that certificate, and they get blocked again. So the attacker gives up, finds some unmanaged devices on the network, and encrypts 5 of those. From there, they're able to pivot, get domain admin access, and once you're in group policy, you can go and make policies to distribute lockbit and try to get out there. So this is where Defender for Identity detects that lateral movement and confirms the account is compromised, because it's in there actually doing incriminating activity. Right before, it was just trying to disable antivirus. Right, it's suspicious, it's not normal, it shouldn't happen, but they're not technically breaking anything yet. So once we get this confirmation that they are doing something malicious, right, that's when it triggers. The user account gets disabled in both Entra ID and on-prem Active Directory and domain services. All of their tokens get automatically revoked. The unmanaged devices, and this is another cool thing that we do because we're built into the network driver on Windows and Mac OS, is that we can contain devices. So a contain is basically an ad hoc firewall where all your Defender for Endpoint managed devices will get instructions to stop communicating to an IP address, right? It'll say, hey, don't talk to that device anymore. And so it's basically an ad hoc firewall rule that we're, again, able to limit these unmanaged devices from spreading the malware remotely. So in this instance, again, from when they pivot from the 5 unmanaged devices to when their account gets disabled, right, it's 14 minutes. And with the new detections that we added for ransomware in October, we can actually do this earlier in the attack chain, and we can do it without the Defender for Identity signal. Another benefit that we've added is something called user contain. So this feature disables all administrative sessions on all of your managed devices. So in this instance, in this attack chain, right, the threat actor technically still has access to that RDP server that they use to gain initial access until they're forced to re-authenticate, right? And at that point, the account's disabled and they won't be able to get back in. But until that happens, right, they're technically still in the environment. So user contain goes in, it's looking for remote PowerShell, RDP, some types of RTC sessions, and it's going to actively drop those sessions. And if an attacker makes backdoor accounts, to establish persistence, right? Because Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Identity, it sees those new administrative accounts that get created during the time this attack chain is going on. It disables, or it contains those accounts as well. So you're evicting the adversary at this point, faster than your SOC, your SIM can even do the alerting detection and response to it. So you're buying your SOC time. You're getting the adversary out of the environment so that you can come in and do your forensics and see exactly what happened without having to worry about the attacker moving laterally. So this is really powerful.
Okay. And so we've seen you slot. Never mind. You had one more to go to. I'm sorry, I didn't say. I thought.
I got a couple more. Just
Okay.
We're already hitting an hour, so we should probably wrap up.
All right, let me go quick. So exclusions and undo, I mentioned, right, is one click release from containment, one click to re-enable the user. And again, when you have Defender for Identity, it does it in both the cloud and on-prem. Deception is a new feature. I believe it's still in private preview right now. Stay tuned to security to see if this is going out. But these are basically text-based records. We're stuffing fake host names in the host file, fake username and passwords in the credential vault. And if an attacker tries to move laterally with any of these fake accounts, right, that's just another signal to get to that 99% confidence level quicker to trigger attack disruption. And then the last thing I want to mention is this is with the new Entra private access and Entra internet access. So this particular feature, continuous access evaluation, right now it's available in conditional access. It only works on Exchange Online and SharePoint Online right now. It's an open standard, but no one's adopted it. But with the new, again, the secure service edge, the Entra internet access, we're going to be able to evict adversaries in near real time across all of your SAML integrated apps, right? So, before we were saying, we're going to revoke the tokens and just, you have to wait for the session token to expire. When you're proxying everything, through our cloud, through this, secure service edge, we can get the adversary out of not just the endpoint, not just the Active Directory, but coming soon, all of your internet-based apps as well.
Yeah, we got to get more conversation around the Secure Service Edge. I think we've had a couple of people that want to come on and talk about it. I met a young woman, she wants to come on, so that'll be one of our topics, I think. But yeah, okay. Very cool.
Great.
Very cool.
That's all I got.
All right, Dan, we'll appreciate it. So, to our listeners, we've talked about XDR on and off, had some other folks come on, and I like the slides that he's presented. I've seen it before. I think definitely everybody on the call has seen it, but the reason it's important because it's still happening, right? Yeah. I'm in Atlanta and I can't pay my water bill right now. Why? Because Fulton County is down and it's all in the news. So I'm not saying anything that's private is in the news. And now my response when I call, well, just hold on to it. And once we're back up, we'll send bills out. That is unacceptable, right? For that
with interest. Yeah.
With interest. And now that the attackers are gave them another deadline and increased the ransom amount. Crazy, right? Well, to our listeners, thanks for coming on at a totally different time. The replay will be out. As Rod said at the very beginning, we will be celebrating Global Women in Cyber, doing 8 shows for the month of March. It is going to be exciting. Andrea just so happens to be a woman, so she's going to be the MC for the entire time.
Oh my God, I am? This is news.
Yeah.
Hot news right now.
Yeah, she's going to handle all of that. But we have some exciting guests. I had a few already reached back out just to ensure that they were still scheduled. They didn't get booted. We don't boot people. I don't think we do. But hey, well, I guess we need to announce it here, won't we, Rod? If you didn't see the announcements about the dates and times doing 2 shows, we will be doing the shows on Monday and Wednesday with 1 off week where we will be doing 3 shows in a week. So we'll get the schedule back out. But stay tuned, everyone. 2 shows a week minimum. I think 1 week we're going to have 3 shows.
And here is the short link for everyone. It is aka.ms/MSI show WICYS, Women in Cyber Security.
It's going to be a good month.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good month. So everyone, I would say same time, but it's not the same time next week. Thanks for listening to the show. I know we're off time, but go listen to the recast. Have a good one.
All right. Have a good week.
Yay.